hey, I don't have the money to invest. Well, start off with whatever you have, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then over time, this is going to compound itself and get much bigger
Yeah,
over
I
time.
agree. Yeah. And again, I said it earlier, right? Don't wait to buy real estate and wait. Real estate is not a get rich quick scheme. A lot of mentors kind of sell it that way. It is
They
not.
do.
It is the most efficient way to grow your wealth, to reach financial independence. But it's not like get rich quick.
Hey, fellow savvy real estate investors. Thanks for tuning in today. We have Trevor Thompson on our show today, and really excited to have a conversation with a fellow Canadian who is now living in the United States. There seems to be a little bit of a trend of this with so many investors we know who are making their way down to the United States. So Trevor now lives in Austin, Texas with his family, but originally is from Ontario and in the Niagara region. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. In terms of his bio and his history, he is a super well-rounded guy, has tons of different types of experience, started his career out in the entertainment industry. And then he spent 20 years working for iFly, which is super cool. And for those of you who don't know iFly is an indoor skydiving experience. And I know my kids watch this on YouTube. So I've definitely heard of iFly. And they grew from one location to 80 locations worldwide. So super impressive track record. And then just like us, made his way somehow into the real estate industry and has since been doing some really cool things, including partnering in various types of deals from multifamily to development to, even single family. So there's lots of different things he's done. I don't know the full scope of all of that, but that's what I'll let Trevor talk more about. So without further ado, here's Trevor Thompson. Trevor, thanks for being on our show.
I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome.
So Trevor, please tell us, I watched for your video on YouTube about the most interesting man, so which I really love because it is a very unique. We don't hear too many people with the attractions background that you have. Yeah. Tell us how you're a little bit about that and how you got into real estate.
Yeah, so I'm originally, as you said, from Niagara Falls, Canada. At the very young age of 13, I started working for Ripley's, believe it or not. I actually worked there all through high school because tourism is what Niagara Falls is all about. Then my boss actually opened a Guinness World Records down the road, and I joined that company and got promoted up through that company and actually became the managing director of the Guinness rights for all of North America, which meant I ran one in the Empire State Building. And to be honest, that was kind of my first taste of doing business in America. I just love the entrepreneurial spirit of Americans, the lower bureaucracy of governments and business. Absolutely. And, Canada's a tough place to do business. And then from there, I started doing consulting. So some guys in Hollywood that owned the wax museum there opened a Guinness in Los Angeles. And so I helped them open a Hollywood wax museum in Branson, Missouri. So I spent a lot of time working in the US. And then originally I actually wanted to open a Guinness World Records in Orlando, Florida, because there wasn't one there. And so I worked on a deal to do that. And then Ripley's bought the rights out for Guinness, which is bizarre that I used to work for Ripley's and they wouldn't grant me the rights. They wanted to open one themselves, but I was determined still to go into the US. So I made a deal with the guy to open a year-round haunted house of all things. And I committed to stay with him for 3 years, and it was a very unfortunately unsuccessful business. Turned out to be a good real estate investment for him because he managed to sell the property for considerably more than he bought it, and they demolished the haunted house. And then unfortunately, that owner got into some trouble and didn't end up building, but that's another story. And then across the street, this thing called iFly Indoor Skydiving opened up, and they needed somebody to help grow their business. They didn't really understand the attractions business. They didn't quite get it, so I got hired on. And interestingly enough, at one of our first team meetings, the owner gave everybody a copy of Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And that book blew my mind, but to be honest, I did nothing about it. I thought, okay, I don't want to get involved in toilets, tenants, and trash. I don't have time, I don't have money. And I just kept working my job with iFly. iFly became hugely successful. We got bought out a few times. We originally was in Orlando, Florida. I was at the original location. And then they moved the company to Austin, Texas, which is why I relocated to here. And I just kept building. We built the company up. And then we got bought out by private equity company. And that was now I no longer had the no money excuse. And I also paid a tremendous amount of income tax. And I remember thinking, real estate, income, best way to, earn money, the best tax rates, man, there's no excuses left. I've got to get involved in real estate. And I still didn't quite understand it. So I started going to those weekend seminars. The first one I went to was give us $50,000 and we'll show you how to buy an office building with no money down on a credit card. And I thought, it doesn't quite sound right. And then I went to a couple of others. And then I stumbled on a local group that mostly did single families, but they had a commercial. And the light bulb came on. I went, wait a minute. When I buy an apartment complex, I'm buying a business. And I have people that are taking care of the toilets, tenants, and trash. And I have all of these things started to come in my mind. And I thought, oh, this is incredible. I've never thought of this. And so I started passively investing and had a goal to stay as a passive investor for quite a while because I loved my job. And my job was going well. You can do still well as a passive investor. And then I just started educating myself like crazy. I went to every meetup I could. I watched every podcast I could to educate myself. And then, and I kept working with iFly. And then all of a sudden, 2020, I got let go with COVID. They went from development to survival, like a lot of companies did. And I thought, okay, this is the universe telling me it's time to be a full-time real estate investor. And so I switched and that's where I am. So that's kind of like very long story in a short version. And like you said, if you go to my YouTube channel, which is Trevor Thompson, you'll find that I call myself the most interesting man in the world because with my journey, I had lunch with Michael Jackson, the world's tallest lady used to work with me. I met Robert Downey Jr. right when Iron Man came out. So I've had a blessed career.
Yeah, no, amazing. Yeah, it is. That video was really, really nicely done. So I appreciate
I
that.
try to have fun.
Yeah.
I try to keep things light and have fun. And so that's why that one was created.
Yeah. So, talk to us a little bit about this transition and, some of the motivations in picking real estate as your second career and a vehicle for you to start investing in. You alluded a little bit to your, influence from Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which we can all relate to. I think every single person almost who we've had on the show, and we're nearing 50 episodes now. It's such an interesting thing. They will all talk about the exact same thing, which is, hey, we read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We read Rich Dad. And, Robert Kiyosaki, kudos to him. I really think he's left a huge legacy because he has influenced so many people into pivoting the way that they think, which is the biggest.
And he reset your mindset, right? So many of us are taught, and there's other people still teaching this, right? Buy your home. Your home is an asset. Live frugally, don't get in debt, all of these things. Yes. Where real estate is somewhat the opposite, right? Real estate, you're using this debt to buy an asset that's producing a cash flow. So the real estate is really powered by the power of leverage. And then, so again, in the US more than even Canada, it's one of the most tax efficient ways for you to earn money. So even if you don't have anything to do with depreciation or any of those things, it's still one of the most efficient ways to earn money. And then, the US has many programs that spur real estate investment. So there's depreciation, there's cost segregation where you can accelerate the depreciation. Love them or hate them, Donald Trump says I pay no income tax. That was because of real estate. And the laws that are in the US, it's not quite the same in Canada, but it still is one of the most efficient ways. And we were even talking before the show, I wish so much I had learned this earlier. Like my intention when I moved from the US or Canada to the US was to buy an Airbnb and then have a place because I still have family back up there that I could go. And I didn't do it. And of course, real estate is appreciated tremendously in the Ontario market. You know, as a joke, I looked at some place I was looking to buy for $300,000, and so many years later, it's $900,000. And I said to myself, oh, man, I wish I'd have bought it, right? And good quote is, you know, don't wait to buy real estate and wait. And if I'd have done it, right, if I'd have stepped out of my comfort zone and I'd have picked up that particular unit, you know, just think about it. My original investment would have tripled in value. And even if it just cash flowed enough to carry the cost of it, the appreciation of it would be staggering. And I didn't. And so I regret, you know, everybody has regrets, but, you know, all you can do is not make those same mistakes moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, I'm curious to know, how long have you been investing as a limited partner? Because you've invested in 20 syndicated deals. Like, how long of a time span has that been in? And what has your experience been in terms of returns? And, you know, and you've invested in not just multifamily, but other asset classes as well.
Yes, I've been investing passively for 5 years now. And then I started just investing in multifamily because I believe very heavily in multifamily, and especially in the markets I'm investing, there's a housing shortage. The people are being priced out of the market, so they can't afford to buy a home, so they do need to stay in apartments. Plus, I'm also quite excited to be able to improve the quality of an apartment and make places better for people to live, try to create better communities, you know, be a good landlord. So I started investing just in multifamily. And to be honest, like 80%, 90% of my investments are in multifamily, but I decided within real estate, I needed some diversification. So I did my first retail investment. Really good timing on that, March 15th, 2020. We all know what happened by the end of March in 2020. And so that investment became a bit of a struggle, but they managed to give us about a 5% cash on cash return, which is not like it was exciting when inflation was 1 or 2%, not so exciting now inflation 7, 8%. But all things considered, and they managed to take it from, you know, they call it a triple net leases now. So they managed to switch a lot of the tenants coming out of COVID by forgiving some rents and putting them on triple net, which passes expenses over to the tenants versus on the landlord. Then I decided that I would invest in a medical center. Again, you know, there was a huge demand created with COVID, and I started looking into medical centers. And so I did a passive investment in a medical center. I also wanted to get a little bit into storage, but I wanted to get an investment in the Carolinas. So again, it all lined up. And one thing I've missed talking about is investing with people you know, like, and trust. So I met this person, connected and talked for about a year, but there was never a deal that she was working on that made sense. And then all of a sudden, she presented a new build storage unit outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, where my brother now lives. And I went, that's the trifecta, right? I wanted to get an investment in the Carolinas because it's really growing, especially in the Charlotte, Raleigh area. Storage, even though it's not exciting, this particular investment with a new build in a new area that's basically a growth projection of Charlotte. There was, you know, a lot of places, there's a lot of ma and pa operations that, you know, are in storage, but this one didn't have anything. So the fact to be able to put in, it's a 600 storage unit. It's a big one.
Wow.
And so to be able to make an investment in that, plus I liked their concept of the investment. It was very interesting that basically they have a construction loan and they have investor money. And then once they stabilize, they can refinance it. And their goal is to pay back the investors a large portion of their capital investment. And then you'll continue to own the asset for a period of time. So it's a little different investment, right? Won't be any cash flow really for 2 to 3 years till this gets built and leased up. But then all of a sudden you'll have a cash event where they'll refinance it once they reach stabilization, and they'll get a more traditional loan. And hopefully interest rates come down by the time they go to do that. It's a bit crazy right now. And so that was very appealing to me. And then I invested in a single family home fund. So it was a little bit different, that I invested in a fund that was buying homes. And it started out okay, but then real estate in Central Texas went crazy, almost doubled in value, and their buy box just got all messed up. You know, their buy box was 3-bedroom, $200,000, you know, all of these things. And then now said it was worth 400, and the math, the 1% rent rule, which a lot of people know didn't work out. So it's been a slower investment, but what they bought is appreciated greatly, but they just haven't been able to get to the critical mass. The idea was to get to a critical mass, get a portfolio loan, sell the portfolio to somebody else.
So this was built to rent?
No, it was buying existing homes. So
Okay.
the real estate group I'm part of, their specialty is like subject to and wraps and distressed sellers. So their goal was, okay, most of that business is run, and anybody in the single family space is based on hard money loans, which are very expensive.
Yes.
So their idea was, if we could eliminate this hard money loan, have, you know, $2.5 million that we raised sitting in a bank, you know, we can close today, we can get contractors in tomorrow, we can get it on the rental market next month. So their idea was, we'll buy a bunch of these homes, accelerate it because we have the cash in the bank. Then we'll refi that particular property, and then we'll get them into portfolio loans after we stabilize them, and, you know, do another refi. So some things, again, the increase of home prices and the increase of interest rates have made that plan a little bit flawed. Now, in terms of returns, it's all over the map. So I've had 2 that just gave me my money back, which I'm not very happy about. I had 1 that tripled my money in 20 months. I think I'm very happy about that one. And then most of the other ones, I look at the IRR, which is an internal rate of return.
Yes.
And they've been in the mid-teens, you know, 15 to 18. And so I'm pretty happy with those returns. And all of them sold before the normal 5-year cycle. And part of that was, you know, real estate just grew so quickly. It was easy for them to get out and, you know, be able to pay their investors off. And the one that 3X my money was another out of Texas investment in Tucson, Arizona. Friend of mine who, again, I've been following him for a year, is highly focused on the Tucson market. So they got in at the right time. They got out before interest rates went too high.
Yeah.
They managed to buy another property, which I rolled my original investment into. And so part of that was just to get a little bit of the gravy in the growth states.
Yeah.
Which is Arizona, Texas, Carolinas, and Florida. Those are the
For
big
sure.
growth states in the US.
For sure. Yeah. So, I mean, when you're deciding where to put your money in, sort of, you know, you alluded to the fact, you know, somebody you know, like, and trust. Do you sort of have a criteria or like certain check boxes that have to meet in order for you to decide which, because there's so many operators, there's so many investments, there's so many asset classes. How does one, you know, maybe walk us through this for somebody who's a newer investor who's looking to get into this type of investment, and maybe explain to us why somebody would even do this. Like, there's so many people out there who want to just go and start buying like a brick and mortar house, right? Like, let me just go buy a house or duplex or something. Let me rent it out. What was the reason why you chose to go this route? Like, it sounds like you completely circumvented that route. You didn't go buy any like, you know, small investments. You decided right away, hey, look, like, I want to go institutional is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
And
so
you made this jump.
Yeah, the single family scared me, right? You're buying a job, and yes, it's an investment, but in theory, you're buying a job. And I had a job, and I was really busy doing well. I've never not get ripped off yet when I have a vendor come to my house. So I thought, why would I want to make that something I would do? You know, because we all know, anybody who's in the single family space, right? You're only as good as your contractors and your team. You know, that's make or break you. And then the light bulb basically came on when I started researching this, that wait a minute, I'm actually investing in a business, and this business is buying a real asset. I'd learned from Robert Kiyosaki and other places the power of leverage. So all these things started lining up, you know. So I'm investing in a business. I'm investing in something that's using debt to accelerate it. And as a passive investor, I'm not signing on any of that debt. My only risk is my investment. there's no other risks and someone else does it. So what I do is I look for the who first, and I've learned a lot about the who. And the who is, know, like, and trust, but I want to go even further. I want to find a who that's offering education to people so this particular investment in Tucson, Arizona, I actually paid for mentoring for them on asset management and went to a lot of their things. And I'll be honest, the opposite of what most people would think, I actually went to a webinar where they did a presentation and they called it Our Worst Deal Ever. What did we learn? And I thought, here's some guys talking about an investment they made and how they struggled through it, didn't give the investors the returns that they promised, but the things that they did to at least give them close to what they had promised everybody. And I thought to myself, that genuine honesty is so important to me. And they just offered a lot of education, right? There wasn't this, hey, I'm great, every investment's fantastic. So I liked that. And then secondly, whatever asset class you want to get in, I like multifamily, but as I mentioned before, I've got some diversification, but find something that you like. And I like the concept of taking an apartment, making it a better place to live, increasing the revenue, all of those things. So I like that as well. And then, so first, the way I explain it is you're betting on your jockey first. Okay, so the jockey is who's racing the horse, right? And then the next one is the horse, and the horse in theory is the asset class, right? Yeah. So most of my investments are in multifamily because I get excited about. I don't really get excited about storing people's junk, but it made a good financial investment. And people do need storage. We have more stuff than we ever could use. I have a funny story. When I left Niagara Falls, I put all my stuff in storage. And then got to Florida, none of it looked like a Florida house. And so, and then a year later, I gave half of it away and reduced the size of the storage. A year later, I gave half it away. And then the last time I just took it all to the charity. And I was like, I paid 3 years to store my junk and never kept anything of it, I always sort of thought, oh, somebody would use this someday. But anyways, out of that story. And then and then the third is the track. And the track is, where is this asset? So that's very broad, right? So is the asset Canada, United States, Costa Rica, wherever you are, that's the track. And then within the track, it becomes very localized, right? So the things I look for are, growth in population, growth in jobs, good average income, and then it gets very micro to the area, right? What are the rents in that area? What's the crime in that area? What are the opportunities? And I try to get the trifecta before I invest.
Yeah, no, that's
a great amazing analogy. Yeah, super great analogy. So yeah, for those of you, like, just to recap, like, the analogy to the horse racing, right? So the what did you call him? The jockey, the horse, and then the track.
Yeah.
So yeah, all equally important. Maybe some people think one is more important than the other, but yeah. Absolutely. Like determining what those three are for you.
Analogy, if you like analogies on passive investing. I like stories because I got a thick head, so you got to tell to me in simple terms. So passive investing is very much like buying a ticket to go on an airplane journey. So you're not buying the airliner, you're not buying the airplane, you don't have the expertise to fly the airline. So you buy your ticket and you are a passenger on a journey. Yeah. And so when you go on the journey, you can continue working, you can retire, you can go on vacation, you can do whatever you want because someone else is doing all the work, right? So the sponsor owns the airline or the airplane. Let's say the pilot is our asset manager that's managing the whole business and he's got specific training. The people making sure the plane is ready to fly, the ground crew are the property management team, the stewards and stewardesses are investor relations, and they do all the work. And you're on a journey. And so they give you updates on your journey. Okay, we're about ready to go. So we're going to be closing on the asset. We get on the plane. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. We got a little turbulence coming up. I got to tell you, we didn't do this right. We've got this happening. We're going to explain it. And then you go on your journey. And at the end of the journey, your responsibility is done. And the difference is on an airplane ticket, of course, it's just a liability. You're just paying to go somewhere. But when you get to your destination, hopefully with most investments, you've earned cash flow on the way. And then the majority of the investments, the biggest portion of the proceeds are on the sale of the event. And so you get paid to go on your journey. So it's an interesting analogy that a lot of people don't think about, because they think, well, I'm going to just do it myself. Well, are you really going to just get on an airplane and go fly it?
Yeah.
And what lessons are you going to learn? And are you going to take other people's money when you're not an experienced pilot and take them on a journey? I mean, think about that, right? I'm going to go borrow my relative's money. I don't really have a pilot's license, and we're all going to fly to the Bahamas. Think about that. It doesn't make any sense, right? But a lot of people do that.
Yeah.
And so again, I like this concept. When I was investing, I heard that early on one of the books that I read. I thought, wow. And all of these light bulbs came on, and that's why I just kept passively investing. And I would have probably kept mostly passively investing if I didn't lose my job, because I didn't have the time to get trained to become an airline pilot yet. I didn't have the time to do all these things, and I didn't have the value to bring to a team. Now I've managed to learn those. And so, because not just one person flies the airplane, right? It's a team.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's such a great analogy. And it actually, I just came back from Atlanta last night, and I can totally relate, because we, had a little bit of turbulence along the way, and had some delays because of the weather. So it's perfect analogy, and I'm gonna use that one in the future as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, I think it's interesting too, because you had a very fulfilling and very successful career. And, the messaging here for a lot of people, it's almost like a lot of the social media messaging and the messaging out there is like, hey, how do I quit my job and become an investor? How do I quit my job and go into real estate? How can I? And I mean, ultimately, like what we tell people and what we believe is that, real estate is a vehicle to get financial freedom. Mm-hmm. What you do with that financial freedom is up to you. You can continue to work because you're passionate about being a doctor, a lawyer, or a business high-end business professional, and you can continue to do that. Or you can have the option, like you did, to say, hey, like now I'm going to pull this trigger because I do have all this passive income as well, and I can start this journey into becoming a full-time real estate investor. So it doesn't have to be that, you could only become a full-time real estate investor when you invest in real estate. And I think that's the biggest message here, that real estate is a vehicle. It's an investment vehicle. And there are lots of amazing ways to utilize it to attain financial freedom. And it oftentimes has nothing to do with your job. It's a completely separate mind block. Like it's another thing that you do. And like you said, you don't have to train to be the pilot. You can still go on the journey.
Warren Buffett said, right, if you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die. So real estate investing lets you earn money while you sleep. Yes. Think about that, right? Your money is working. You're not working. You worked, you earned your money, and now you're putting your money to work. And another really good analogy that a lot of people, and again, this is about starting early. And a lot of people say, well, I want to create enough passive income so I can quit my job. But let me give you another thought. Okay, typical real estate investment should double in 5 years. And we're just going to forget taxes and try to make math simple. So I put $100,000 in the deal. 5 years later, it's worth $200,000. I put the $200,000 in the deal, and 5 years later, it's worth $400,000. 5 years later, it's worth $800,000. 5 years later, it's worth 1.6 million. Oh no, I'm doing my math wrong. $1.6 million. I leave it again, and it becomes $3.2 million. So think about that. Put $100,000 in, let it ride and compound. And 25 years later, it's worth $3.2 million.
Exactly.
Wow. Just again, when I started to learn about that, right? So it's the power of leveraging debt, and then the power of compounding your money. And so if as a young man at age 25, I had done this, which I didn't. I didn't start till I was 55, so I waited way too long. But if I had started that, where I'd be in life right now would be totally different just from one investment.
Yes.
Mind blowing, right?
Absolutely.
And a lot of people,
Absolutely mind blowing.
they
Yeah,
Say it like
and
that.
that is the unfortunately most people do not understand how money works. Like, the rule of 72
Yeah.
is, your number of your rate of return really matters, and you putting your money in the right investments really matters, because you have to educate yourself on the opportunities and vetting the operators and the sponsors. And ultimately that's going to lead you to financial success, and you don't necessarily have to have a ton of money to start. And that's the misconception other people have too, that, hey, I don't have the money to invest. Well, start off with whatever you have, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then over time this is going to compound itself and get much bigger.
Yeah,
over time.
I agree. Yeah. And again, I said it earlier, right? Don't wait to buy real estate, buy real estate and wait. Real estate is not a get rich quick scheme. A lot of mentors kind of sell it that way. It is not. It is the most efficient way to grow your wealth, to reach financial independence. But it's not like get rich quick. But you again, look at it, 25 years, in theory, we turned $100,000 to $3.2 million. $3.2 million is life-changing.
Yeah.
100%.
Life-changing. And then again, so let's say I started that at 25. Now I want to retire at 50. And assuming you would do more investments along the way once you saw the power of it, right? Just think about it then. And if you did every 5 years, just put 100,000 in, it would, your financial future would be totally different if you did that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that it goes back to what Jose was saying. I mean, I can speak, we have a network who's, in their late 20s, maybe in their 30s, people who are younger right now, they are so much focused on making more money. And that is the only thing they think about. It's like, hey, I need to get this $10,000 raise, or I need to switch jobs and get and nothing against that. Absolutely. Like, you should be striving to make more money, but they are not thinking at all about, hey, when I make this extra money, or when I do this extra thing, what can I do with that money to make even more money? And I think that is the gap. And like Jose said, the lack of financial awareness and education.
Yeah. Well,
and people are looking for jobs where it's like, hey, what's, are there RRSP contributions here in Canada, right? Like, are there pension plans and stuff? Maybe the narrative and the focus needs to change, and to say, hey, like, how am I going to control this narrative? And how can I put aside even $10,000 a year or $20,000 a year and start to invest this capital towards my retirement, or towards this benchmark of retiring at 50, or whatever it is that one wants to do, right? So it is definitely needs to be a lot more education and a lot more flip in the
big
dialogue.
difference is you working for your money, or your money working for you.
That's right.
It's as simple as that, right?
Yeah.
Like hey, I had a good job and I did well, and we got bought out. I did well, and I earned that. But if I had changed my focus, again, we talked about if I'd have bought that Airbnb before I moved to the US,
Right.
In theory, my original investment would be paid off. I've been here long enough. Assuming I did nothing but that one, I'd have, and something to legacy to leave to my daughter that's still in Canada. It's quite amazing.
Yeah.
Sure.
And unfortunately, what most people end up doing when they do get a raise, or they get some cash, they end up buying a nicer car, and they
Or putting into their buying a bigger house for themselves, right?
No, my sister used to tease me that I was the richest poor person she knew, because I spent everything.
Yeah.
I was that belief. That was her joke, right? Because they were the opposite. They were frugal and did different things. And she said I was the richest poor person she ever knew. Because if I got a raise, I just bought more.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I completely understand.
So I wanted to ask you about you've been networking, attending a lot of networking events to educate yourself and grow your personal relationships with operators. Give us some tips about networking, because I feel like you're one of the masters at networking. You are so passionate about it. you've been able to connect with so many like-minded individuals and able to create opportunities for yourself. So
Yeah.
tell us, maybe a couple of tips about networking and how to effectively network with other folks.
Yeah. So first off, again, I'm going to give you another cute quote, right? Your network is your net worth.
Yeah.
So, you always want to be building your network of people, and you always want to be growing your network of people with people that are just a few steps ahead of you, right? I refer to it as I got one hand reaching forward, somebody pulling me along, and then I'm going to reach backwards with my hand and pull somebody else along. And it's quite interesting that the real estate community, the people I've connected with, they're all following that mantra. They really do want to. Sure. They go to the gurus or the leaders and they bring people along. And that was a big passion of mine. I set a goal at the end of last year to get 1,000 people to create financial independence through real estate investing. Now, it doesn't mean all 1,000 people are going to invest with me. Hopefully listeners from this show learn some things, may invest with you. At the end of the day, my goal is that they invest in real estate. So, and it was an interesting thing, so when it first started, we were all doing in-person meetups and everything. And then I'll tell you, my world opened up when the pandemic happened because all of these things went to Zoom. And next thing you know, I started meeting people all over, started connecting with people. And, what are the chances of us meeting, right? I'm in Texas, you're in Mississauga. How are we ever going to connect? But we do, right? Because we start getting on these forums, we start doing things. And there are so many networking events that you can get on. And for me, it was easy because, there was only me, right? I have a wife and a grown son that live here. So some nights I was doing 3 virtual meetups a night, like starting at 6 p.m. and ending at 9 p.m. with an hour on each. And every one of them I left with 2 to 3 people to have a follow-up call with. And I learned 3 different topics because I like to go to meetups that offer education and then networking. I do one myself, the third Thursdays. We do a networking event, and it's all about educating people. So it's on Zoom, it's virtual. People can, connect. If you connect with me on LinkedIn or some other way, you'll get invited to it. In this month, we're just talking about a guy who's really good at using systems to automate his life. So he uses VAs and other things next month, we have somebody talking how to read your K1 as a passive investor. And a K1 is kind of like your tax return from your investment, and how do you read it? And we just try to offer, the end of last year, we did what should you be doing for your year-end planning to make sure that you're not paying as much taxes. So getting on these meetups, and then of course there are big in-person meetups. I've not done a real estate meetup yet in Canada. I was tempted. There was one in Toronto, and I just didn't work out with the timing. But there are a lot of conferences, and of course I do meet several Canadians at these conferences. And some of the big ones are like Best Ever Real Estate Conference. Best Ever is one of the longest real estate podcasts. Great place to get some. They just offer tons of education, and it's 3 days with 1,000 like-minded people. And it's everything from, like, I met a guy there in 4 years, built his real estate empire to $3 billion. Think about that. 4 years, he grew from very small beginnings to $3 billion of owned real estate. And I shook his hand. And he presented there and kind of told how his journey went and what you could do. And it's mind-boggling.
Absolutely.
And then joining a mentorship program is also something that's a very good thing to do because it accelerates you. And they all have good and bad, right? There's always bad things about a mentor program. There's always good things about a mentor program. No one offers a perfect program. But I've joined several, and that's what started me. I don't even recommend the one I started in, but without it, I wouldn't have started. Yeah. So for that, I'm thankful.
Sure. Yeah, like they say, right? Like even if you get one golden nugget, you can't always quantify what you get from any certain experience, whether it's a conference or a meetup or whether it's a mentorship program. But ultimately, as long as you get something, that golden nugget that propels you to that next level, then oftentimes it's worth it, right? It's at least you're taking actionable steps towards wherever it is that you want to be.
Yeah.
So,
and then for me, I'm just, again, I'm a follower of Grant Cardone, mentioned him before, and he said, if people don't know you, it's your fault. And he talked about omnipresence. So I actually spent this year being omnipresent. I tried to be everywhere, and I'm sure that's how you found me. Yeah. And I set a goal to be on 52 podcasts. I went to a thing and this guy talked about being on other people's stages and how you can reach their audience with your message, no matter how, and it was like, wow. And so I just started doing it. Now I need to focus a little bit more, and I'm going to actually back up a little bit from networking and, do a little bit more on deal flow. But I'll still be networking.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Amazing. And I wanted to ask you a little bit more about the recent deal that you guys you did, and now you're helping with the asset management. Tell us a little bit more about that one.
Yeah. So again, I've been looking for a long time to find a deal. And it's hard sometimes, especially, everybody says, oh, invest in Texas is great, but it's a very competitive market. And we kept looking and looking and looking, and we found a deal through a broker, but it was off market. It wasn't publicly marketed, which meant, it was really only us negotiating with the seller and if we could come to terms. It was also at a time as interest rates were going. So we did a loan assumption, which meant we assumed somebody else's loan, which is a slower and harder thing to get done. And you also, one of the things we didn't talk too much about it, big thing in the US is you can get loans with 3 years of interest only payments, and all of the interest only payments were gone. So that was another thing. But we looked at the property, it was very mismanaged. It's in San Antonio, hour and 50 minutes from my house. And so we managed to buy it with a group of partners. And, and again, we've brought some people in, we networked to help us raise the money. This particular person that found the deal and brought me into the team, we met through networking. She actually owns a property management company, and she helped me on deals I made offers with, and our goal was to get on a deal together, and it worked. And, so we're very excited. I've been going there once a week. It's definitely a distressed property. And so it's taking some time and energy to turn it around. But that's the beauty of it, right? Again, our goal is to take a place that's mismanaged and manage it well, and then make it a better place to live that produces returns for our investors.
Yeah,
absolutely. No, that's great. So I guess just in closing, as we come to kind of our time here, I want to know, what is motivating you to move forward? I mean, you've already had a successful career, obviously in terms of like, you're able to financially retire. You're of an age where a lot of people decide that they're going to retire. What is your why? Like, what is it that's moving you forward or motivating you to continue on with this? And really, what are your goals over the next 5 years? Are you going to slow down, or do you see yourself just being,
I never see myself slowing down. I never thought of myself as retiring or doing anything. And I could financially retire, but I couldn't leave a legacy for my children yet. I'm not at that level. If I just started with the 100,000 and got up to 3.2 million, I'd be at that point where I know I could be leaving a legacy. It's something that for my children to do. So my goal now is that I've got to this sort of critical mass. I've joined up with another group of people, and the idea is now that I'll be a smaller part of many deals versus a bigger part of a few deals. Because it's very hard to pick it off one by one. This is a group, they've set a goal to buy $150 million worth of assets this year. They've invited me to join their group, and the role I'm playing with them is networking with investors to connect with people to invest in the deal, which is my skill set. So my ultimate plan is, of course, not to be as involved in the day-to-day, a little bit more. I want to make sure I achieve my goal that 1,000 people have reached financial independence from my influence. To me, that's a big why. And then the beauty with real estate in the US, it's that's part of the reason why I'm here is, first of all, it's a very tax efficient way to earn your money. Then we have this thing in the US called a 1031. So my ultimate goal is bigger deals, build a net worth, 1031 in it to something to dirt. Okay, it sounds crazy, but I want to be Walgreens, CVS, Starbucks' landlord. Okay, so it's the least risk real estate work there is. So 1031 into that, which means I pay no personal income tax, buy this dirt that's producing, solid regular cash flow. In the US, I can die and my heirs inherited at a stepped up tax value. So think about this. I took $5 million out of my real estate thing and I 1031 into a deal and paid no income tax on that. Then 5 years later, let's hope I last a little longer than that, I pass away, but it's worth $10 million and my children inherit it without owing income tax. Think about that. So that's my goal, is to create that legacy. And then I actually have created it to where they won't get all the money. It's actually any new money that earns takes 8 years to pay them out. Because I don't want them to be these rich, spoiled kids that, and so basically it's just to create that security moving forward. So that's a legacy that I want to leave.
Yeah,
but
that's a good
1,000
one.
people that reach financial independence, a lot of people. And again, they don't have to invest with me. They just have to learn about real estate investing.
Right.
And then, of course, along the way, always improving the communities that we take over and, producing value that way to a community.
Yeah, no,
for
that's sounds very, very, I think is a great goal. It seems you're very passionate about reaching this goal, and I love that.
Yeah. So Trevor, thank you again for being on our show. Before we wrap up, we will put it in our show notes as well, but maybe you could give our listeners a quick synopsis of what the best way to reach you is and, some of those links.
Yeah, so LinkedIn is the easiest just because I'm easy to find there. So Trevor Thompson, you got to use my full name to find me. And then if you just send a note saying I saw you on a podcast, I accept you. Facebook, I'm a little more not as acceptable. Like if I don't know you, we don't have mutual friends, and I'm close to my 5,000 limit, so it must be popular, or I got a lot of people I don't know. And so that one's harder. My website is Niagara-Investments, because I had to get a dash in there to get it .com, so you can find me there. And then as I mentioned before, I have a YouTube. I also have a Facebook group called Learn and Earn. So again, I want people to learn about real estate and then earn from real estate. So that's kind of my mantra, learn and earn.
Nice.
Absolutely. Yeah. We have links to all of those. So we'll definitely put them in our show notes. I think that you've been a wealth of knowledge. I think that people should definitely reach out, join the Facebook group, reach out to Trevor on LinkedIn. And again, we want to thank you for coming on the show, for your honesty and all your wisdom. It's been a really, really fun conversation.
Yeah. The one thing I miss saying is good to see you, eh? Or out and about. They always catch me in America when I say out and about.
That's so funny. We don't even think about it, but yeah, absolutely.
Yep. As soon as I say that, somebody will say, "Are you from Canada?"
That's so funny.
Thanks again.
Thanks again, Trevor.
Thank you.
Take care.